I like traveling. I like seeing family. I like fishing with grandsons and the adventures of life. And I really like coming home. I like being with family here. And let me tell you what's coming up next week. I got a text from a fella that I knew in college, Buddy Payne, who really smart guy. And he was 1 year ahead of me, and we knew each other, and our kids knew each other, and we've just stayed in touch forever. And they're coming back from an Alaskan cruise and said, would you pick me up by the airport, our hotel, and I'll come to church with you. And why I'm so excited to have you here this morning, I said, Buddy, when you get here, there's going to be nobody here. There's me and Glenda and him, Buddy, you and your wife, Marilyn, 6 chickens and 1 homeless person. That's all. And that you're actually here. And if you can, please come back next week. I didn't ask him to. Sometimes wherever you go, you're always asked to preach. You never get to hear the speaker. Maybe he'll want to preach. Maybe he'll just want to sit and enjoy being with you, the believers. But anyhow, do come back, particularly next week, so it's just not us and chickens. But beyond that, we're going to be looking at the qualities that you're evaluate when seeking a preacher. You might say, well, why in the world do I want to know that? Well, it may be that you have a part in helping decide who will be the next person to come. And you say, Paul, what about you? I am easy, whatever. If you get a guy that's spectacular, needs no brush up, man, I'll sit out there with you and cheer him on. If you say, well, he needs a little more work, well, I'll be willing to do that. Well, anything is okay. If you're a visitor, here's what you can get out of it. That you'll look at things and you say, that's something, not maybe being as a preacher, but a quality I could work on in my own life. And so take a look at it and apply it personally and say, how can I grow? Next week, if I preach, it'll be, do you love me more than these? Like we sing, how I love thee and like a deer pants for the water. Well, is that not only great songs, but is that really demonstrated in our lives? We're going to take a look at that. And so however you are, we just appreciate having you, although Joy and Ben and the family, they'll be in Midwest. Jenny Westfall is going to be traveling down around through California and Arizona or whatever on a little vacation with her son Joseph, who maybe it's a graduation present. And so we're going to miss you. Be safe. Love you to pieces. So glad to have all of you here. Well, so let's talk about that. If you're in a congregation, you're listening to a preacher, what kind of things do you look for? If you're in a congregation, congregations always change preachers. Sometimes they change preachers every 2 years or 20 years. You just can't know that. It's just different time frames. And so I've never had really the necessity or the requirement to find a preacher. I've always been the preacher. And a decade ago, Glenda said, Paul, you need to be slowing down. I said, Glenda, I'm speeding up. And that's really true. And she said, how do you feel? I feel great about it. What if we don't find one for several weeks or a month or a year? That's okay. I've had 2 people this morning say, Paul, what's it like for you taking back on the responsibilities that you and Joe had? I'm fine. Why? Because I know how to do it. I've been doing it for half a century. And you say, Paul, are you good for the next 300 years? Well, probably not 300 years, but I'm fine. And so just want to say, delighted to help out any way that I can. So as you're looking for a preacher, as you're listening to a preacher, is it, well, he's got to be good looking. He's got to be on TV. Well, that lets most preachers out right there. The reality is, do they love the Lord their God with all their heart? When Jesus was asked, What's the greatest commandment? The Jews had, 500 627 different laws. Well, so many are positive, so many are negative, and not everybody agrees with the number. They say, I think really this commandment is just a restatement of the other one in different words. But anyhow, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And Jesus said, if you want to know the big deal, love the Lord with all your heart. If you're here this morning, whether a member, a visitor, wherever it is, in all our life, we always look at, am I serious about what I'm about? Or I'm just a drifter. I float in and float out. Think about this. I'll just take a look at different things. If you're listening to a preacher anywhere, on TV, on the radio, in person, whatever it is, every preacher has 2 good sermons. They may not have any more than 2, but he's got at least 2. And if the only thing you're judging on, I heard 2 sermons, okay, he's good. That's not saying much more than he's got a nice part down the middle of his hair. But it doesn't tell you enough about the person. It tells you he has some capability. Then you look at, are they of divided interest? Maybe their big deal is real estate or selling Amway, and I'll try to work the preaching in with the thing, or sports, that is my biggest deal. Well, you have to think about that. I had a situation, and some of you, I've told this before, but it interests me. Years and years ago, 35 years ago, I was preaching up in Renton and had a young couple, as they will do sometimes, would you come and give us some premarital counseling? How do you be a good husband and wife? And so we went through several weeks of that. And at the end of that time, this was the next to the last time we were going to be meeting together for the standpoint of pre-marriage counseling, because they got everything that I knew that I thought would be helpful to put in their little toolbox of great qualities and attitudes such as that. And but the young lady was a little unhappy with the young man because he wasn't spending enough time with her according to her. And he said, well, because they were at the end of high school, he said, I need some time with my friends. I said, well, there is that. I said, but you realize when you get married, you will be spending more time together. And it's like, I hadn't considered all those intricacies. And I said, because I lived up in Renton and they were more down in the Sumner area. And I said, you might talk about that on the way home. And so they talked about it on the way home. The next week they come up and there's our last class. And I said, how'd that go today? It didn't go very good. Okay, well, tell me about it. And the guy says, and I am not making this up, he says to me, well, I've always wanted to take a trip by motorcycle down into New Mexico. And I was just wondering if I should take the trip into New Mexico or get married. I go, wow, a true story. I said, that's a big deal. Why don't you talk about it on the way home? That was the end of that. What monumental immaturity. Why? And you shake your head, and rightfully so. You don't know what to say about that. It's just, now, the reality is, how much did he love her? Not very much. And so you got to figure out, is it God or motorcycle? I like motorcycles. I like traveling, but if push comes to shove, what's the biggest motivator in your life? And what you can do is you can check congregations where Joe Blow has been. Sometimes congregations don't check. You go job prospecting and such as that. And quality companies. I get calls from different places. Hey, do you know Henry McGillicuddy? And yes, and what do you think about him? Here's a different congregation, different era. It just shows the value in checking. If you want to use me as a reference, I'll give a reference. The upside is, if you're on track going around, and I'll tell them that, yep, that's a solid person. If you're not doing very good, I'm required to tell the truth. So here's this one company, different congregation, different person. And they call, do you know so-and-so? And the so-and-so was a late teenager that wanted to work for me because his brother had and he'd make money at it, but didn't want to work. And I'd ask him, I said, look, I need this stack of firewood moved from here to over there. He said, well, can't you do that? Hold it. You never go on the job and ask the boss tells you to do A or B. You ask the boss if he could do it. That's what you're here for. When you're asked something to do, you do whatever you're asked for and say, is there anything else that I can do? Oh, okay. And he starts out mowing along. He said, 5 minutes in, said, hey, can we have a water break? How about some lemonade? I said, you've been working 5 minutes. Look, get the lawn done and then we'll take a break. Anyhow, so a few years later, they're applying because now they've passed from 15 or whatever to 18 and they're trying to get a job on the market. And here is this prospective employer calls and says, I'll just make up a name. Wilbur has applied at our company, and one of the questions we have for you is he'll be taking care of disabled people. And do you think he can work without supervision? I said, without supervision? He doesn't work very well with supervision. So it just is. You need to know what's the background of this particular person. So check the congregations where they've been. Some guys are religious wrecks. In 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verses 12 through 16, Eli, judge, priest, his sons were disasters. And so you can't know just because the guy has a nice smile. So do your homework. But then we get to thinking about ourselves. God, as you look at us. And I tell people, if you need flawless, I don't do flawless. I don't know how to do flawless. I can do pretty good. And most of us are like that. And we're saying, God, is there an area you want me to grow this year? Here's one thing I can do better. And so when you're looking at qualities in seeking a preacher, well, you get to think about things. Well, are they sacrificial? Well, what do you mean by that? Well, with their time and their energy. In 2 Corinthians 12:15, Paul said, I'll most gladly spend and be expended for your sakes. And so as you think about serving God, I am absolutely delighted that you're here. Sometimes there's this massive snowstorm, and I don't know if anybody will show up, and lots of people do. You come because you love God. You come because you want to grow. You come because you're committed. You come, maybe if you're just curious, how does all this work together? We're just a family. Our disposition is come, be treated like family. You don't have to come for 3 months before somebody will talk to you. We're just delighted that you're here. And so as you think about that, is that how we feel about others? And sometimes I have people say, thank you for helping me. I say, look, that's what I do. My attitude is I want to honor God and serve others. Why is that? Well, because the second greatest law was you love your neighbor as yourself. You know, some people don't even like people. You know, there's a church is fine, it's the people I don't like. Well, there's a major problem with that, because if you're a family, you have those connections and you care about others. Because an individual can be a great speaker, but not actually care about the people. In Romans chapter 1 and verse 31, it talks about individuals without natural affection, astorgos, and that means without family affection. They they don't get it. They don't want family. I come, I say hello, but then I get out of here as fast as possible. And so you want a preacher that's part of the family, that if you're having a challenge, he cares about you. Okay, we'll sign somebody up to go visit you. What can we do to help each other? We just really care about each other, want each one to do well. How can we help you flourish? So, do they really love God? And do they really love people? Well, there's something else we can think about.
Are they doctrinally sound? In 2 Timothy chapter 2 and in verse 15, you'll have a problem with some people aren't. They're just upside down. That is, they can speak well, but their major views, wow, that's not biblical. I have a guy that I've met one time. I've talked to almost weekly for 4 years. He calls me several times a week. When you say several, what do you mean? Oh, 3, 4 times a week. Paul, I got a Bible question for you. I've been talking to my friends, the Mennonites, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, somebody, and he's got some question. And he would start out, and I've mentioned this kind of interaction several times over the years. He'd start out by saying, Paul, what do you feel about it? I said, don't ask me how I feel about it, what I think about it. You always want to know, whatever the question is, what does the Bible have to say about it? So every question you ask, we want to give you a Bible answer. And so it took him more than a year to finally say, you're just going to the Bible. That's all I'm doing. We're going to the Bible. And we are applying it doctrinally. We're applying it in family relations. Whatever it happens to be, what does the Bible have to say about it? And people will have all kinds of oddball ideas. You want to know the person. If you're going to a doctor, he said, man, I just been to a seminar. I was talking to somebody just this past week that talked about they had an individual they came across, said, really, and I'll just apply it to healing. They said, really, I've opened my little business up. It's the Paul Hawthorne Psycho-Cybernetic Health Clinic. You say, what's that? Well, you come there and I go, oh, you're healed. Whoa, that's it, $45, please. You say, wait a minute, I don't think that has any basis in anything. Well, no, but it's financially lucrative. You want to know, is the person on target? And you can't get that really just from 2 sermons. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, some wanting to be teachers of the law, but understand neither what they say nor what they confidently affirm. They got strong opinions and no foundation. And that's one of the things I'm known for. That's somebody will say X, Y, or Z. I say, can we demonstrate that? Can we prove it? What's the evidence for it? And if I go online and I'm working with a website in AI and it says blah, 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 I said, what's the evidence for that? Well, that's really kind of a guesstimate. I said, okay, I don't want guesstimates. I want hard facts. They said, well, and blah, blah, blah. And so they back up a little bit. That you want to know, does it come from the Bible? Is it factual? Is it provable? And if not, you've got enough confidence to say, I was looking in the Bible, I couldn't find where it says what you say. Can you show me the verse? That's what you want. Somebody that's on to, I want a doctor to say, look, I'm trained, I know, let's say it's orthopedic surgeon. I want that guy to know his job. That's it. Hey, I've read a couple of books on it. They were highly illustrated. More comics. I say, yeah, thanks. I'm done. I'm out of here. I want him to know his business. And that's what you want with a preacher. Is he on target because you know the word yourself? Then you think about, are they quality speakers? Is that the most important thing? We put a lot of weight on it, but that's not the biggest deal in the world. If he doesn't love God, if he doesn't love you, and he's not right, I don't care, if he's Gabriel, and he's got wings flapping out here. If he's a great speaker, but he's upside down, then you say, thank you very much for your service, but next. And so in Acts 14 and down in verse 1, they so spoke that a multitude believed. Well, you don't want somebody that, because of their attitude or whatever, that it's miserable to listen to them. They don't have to be eloquent. They just have to be good. And so I think about things like showing balance. In 2 Timothy 4 and in verse 2, Paul tells Timothy to reprove, prove it. If you have to, prove it a second time. Rebuke them. If they're on track, tell them so. and exhort, encourage with great patience and instruction. Some people are all about, man, I beat them to death. Wait a minute, I thought you were the ambulance driver and you're supposed to be helping. Oh, no, man, if you can't make it on your own, you got no room in the ambulance for you. Wait a minute. You're supposed to be helping the people get on track, show them you love them, and here's the facts of where they could get better. And so some people say, oh, yeah, just whatever people want, that's what I preach. The Bible calls them ear ticklers. They are men pleasers in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and in verse 3. Some preachers know what the book says, but won't say it because the particular group they're with, they know it's not right, but it's what the group wants. You don't want somebody like that. I never go to the doctor and say, doctor, look, I know you're going to give me a diagnosis. I want you to give me the diagnosis that I want. Good luck with a doctor like that. Okay, you're good. See you next year. That's hopeless. You want somebody. I don't want a doctor who said, man, you are a wreck, and I dread seeing you. Oh, well, imagine that. I want somebody to say, Paul, okay, here's the real deal, and the real answer is this. I went into orthopedic surgeon several years ago, do a lot of sports and sometimes knee problems. I had knee surgery. And I went in there and he said, now here's the real deal. I do this all the time. Now 20 years ago we would have operated on you, but we didn't know in the meniscus. Here's what we've learned in 20 years. If the damage is just to the perimeter, that can heal. If it's deep, it won't heal just on its own. But here's what we find. If you'll do this, how did it work out? Tremendous. I did what he asked. How do you feel? Feel great. And so you want somebody that knows what their business is and will tell you the straight skinny on it, not just, because everybody will have somebody that, I don't think I like him. Yeah, no, I like him. When Joe was asked to come to Kent, and like I had mentioned, I told Joe months ago, if they ask, go. I love you, man. They really need you. And he said the elders told him they had, when the elders in Kent talked to their congregation, the elders themselves said, if we have 70% of the people that say it's okay, we'll hire him. He said he had 92%. Well, that's great. There's an old story about a younger preacher asked an older preacher, he said, you know, I got a problem that where the congregation where I am, not everybody likes me. He said, well, about what percent of the people like you? He said, well, there's only about 80%, and 20% don't like me. The older preacher said, 80%, that's as good as it gets, man. You're not going anyplace else. So you think about presidential approval ratings. Wherever they start off at, they always go lower from there. So you're looking for somebody that's good, that loves God, loves people, and then how talented he is at speaking, that may vary. And then you want to think about this element. Are they evangelistic minded? In Matthew chapter 28:19, Jesus said, go make disciples of all nations. Do you care about others? Have you been asking your relatives or your neighbors, hey, let me encourage you to come to church with me? It is great. Because that's our mission in life. Romans 10 and verse 14, how shall they hear without a preacher? And so somebody's got to do the speaking. And so 2 Timothy 4:5, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. I know of one preacher, Paul, do preachers like all other preachers? No. This guy is not in our area, not in our state, never has preached here. And I have known them for 40 years. Do you have high regard for them? Nope. Do you invite them to come preach? Nope. He told the congregation in a distant state, when they hired him, he said, I don't do evangelism. Oh, I mean, what do you do? I count jelly beans? Oh, he preaches on Sunday, and every day of the week would go watch movies. I go, huh.
I don't know what to say about that. It's like a doctor. I'm fine, but I don't do doctor stuff. Well, there you go, all right. And the reality is, make good decisions. Do they just sing to the choir? Watch movies? Sit in their office? And so Hebrews 6 and verse 12 says, show the same diligence that you may not be sluggish. And so that's true in all of our life. Be ardent, be concerned, be excited about, be devoted to. And then what about this? What about showing humility? I liked this little graphic because the you in humility is the least part of that. And that made me curious. Is a person of a humble attitude, that is, have a modest view of their own importance. And so I thought, well, here's the you in humility. Well, that's done that way to indicate that, look, Paul, aren't you the most important person? Absolutely not. I'm just one of the family. Here's what I do, and you do the rest of the family. And I was doing some construction work with another Christian yesterday, and he talked about this wood that if you just have a board in the hot sun, it can warp. When you have it finger jointed and glued like a glue lamb, it doesn't warp. And I thought, that's kind of like Christians. Because of our closeness and tight-knit, we're together and we're stronger for being together than we'd ever be separately. So I thought, well, what about the alphabet? And so I asked, is there a most important letter of the alphabet? And the response was, there is no most important letter in English, although E is most frequently used with 13%, and the letter U is just 3%. Well, how about Christians in a group? Well, the fact is, Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of you but to act justly and love mercy and walk humbly with your God? Paul said of himself, I am the least of the apostles, not fit to be an apostle. Jim Putterball, down in the Philippines, disabled, was as a young man one of my mentors. He's only a few years older, but knew way more than me. I said, Jim, I'm thinking about this question. He'd go to his library, pull a book off the shelf, open it to the right page, and point to the paragraph where the statement is found. I'm not talking about the Bible. It's just a book. Blew me away. And when he was leaving for the Philippines, I said, Jim, I'm really going to miss you. He said, you want to know how much I'm going to be missed? Take a glass of water. In this case, I have a bottle. Take the cap off, put your finger in the bottle, pull it out, and see how big a hole you've left in the water. Well, did I do that? Yeah. I want to see how, what's going to happen is, I'm going to stick my finger in the water, pull it out, it's going to ripple. Nothing happened. And the fact is, Paul, you're just here like everybody else to serve God. And it'd be like in football and everything else. The quarterback goes down, what's the coach say? Next, whoever's next in line, the next pitcher, whatever, you just get up and you go serving God. And so, that's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:9, I am the least of the apostles. 1 Timothy 1:15, Christ came to save sinners, Paul says, of whom I am foremost or the worst. Why? I persecuted the church of God. Acts 14:27, they reported all things when they come back from the first missionary journey that God had done through them. Well, let me tell you what a big number I am. God, you are the greatest. I'm just here to serve. I am here to encourage. Romans 12:10, giving preference to one another in honor. If somebody's got to get the credit, it's going to be Jeff or Robert or Tom or whoever it's going to be, because you want them to appreciate you recognize their contribution. And so everybody think, well, I'm just here. And I looked out, Juliet, I am so glad you're here. Paula, Fika, I am so glad you're here. Family, Rose, Mike, the Martins,
I am thrilled to be surrounded by people that I love and trust. And so, does the preacher brag on, let me tell you, I baptized 739 people, and I got it all written down in my Bible here, and I bet that's more than you. Paul, how many of you baptized through the years? I have no idea. I never keep track. It's just, that's up to God. And one person plants, somebody else waters, God gives the increase. So as we come on down, I'd like you to think about this. Do they have relationship skills? We want to wrap up. Or are their relationships with others in turmoil? 2 Timothy 2:24, the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, kind to all, able to teach, patient when wrong, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition. Romans 15:14, I'm convinced, brethren, that you're full of all goodness, filled with knowledge, able to counsel one another. And so you want somebody that knows their business, loves God, loves people, is on track, and has an idea how to make relationships work. Not everybody does. Romans 16:17, watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way, contrary to what you've learned, and turn away from them. If that's their background, they've split church after church to say, thank you, Henry, you're out of here. And so Nelson Mandela said, no one is born hating another person because of the color of their skin or their background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. And so, in our search for a coming preacher, God's in control. Whatever happens, happens. And Paul, do you feel anxious about it? Nope. God's in control. We're just here to serve in the meantime. And the kind of preacher we seek says something of the church we want to be. And so, let's seek a man who hungers for righteousness, who lives by the word, and lifts up Jesus by every word and work that he does. Revelation chapter 3 and in verse 8, I have put before you an open door, and no one can shut, because you have a little power. You've kept my word. I hope that that's who we are, like Philadelphia. We're here to serve God. Whatever happens, that's up to you. And I'm going to rejoice in it. We're going to be singing now 149. If we can help you in any way,